Hi everyone, welcome back to Mama's Orchids and Backyard. I'm Kim and I grow orchids outdoor in Zone 9 in the Texas Gulf Coast area. I recently went back to Vietnam after 40 years of living there, and I had a wonderful trip. And as I did a backpack tour around the country, I kept an eye out for any orchids that I saw along the way, and I captured some of them on video and pictures, and along with other beautiful plants too. So I'm putting them all together in this video, and I hope you all enjoy it. Thanks for joining me on this one. I decided to go to Saigon Zoo on the first day we got there because I was so excited about the Orchid House. As I entered the zoo, I already spotted two arrangements of orchids and ferns mounted on this giant tree. And mostly they're dendrobiums, and it looks like they're temporarily mounted on the tree and in plastic pots, and they probably change out with whatever is in bloom. When I was walking towards the Orchid House, I noticed a bonsai garden, and it looked small, and I was thinking I could do a quick visit here first since I was there already. And the bonsai all look well maintained, and they look so nice and tidy to me. And they all look like tiny villages on a flat piece of stone on stilts. And so as I was going in, I couldn't wait to see the variety that a tropical zoo would have. I immediately thought of San Diego Zoo. You remember when we did that visit to San Diego Zoo and saw all the specimen-sized orchids that they confiscated. I was thinking, was I going to see that here too? Okay, let's go across to the Orchid House, and we see a lot of hanging baskets of petunias here. And there's some bonsai behind there as well, so we'll stop at that on our way coming back out from the Orchid House. Above the large fern is a giant mount of Cymbidium alloifolium or Dianum, and it's hard to tell from down here. So let's turn to our left for the Orchid House, and the sign says Nhà Lang, and it's translated exactly house orchid. Yes, yeah, Vietnamese language is just that simple. So my first impression is that this is a fairly sparse orchid house compared to a few years ago in the past. And I only knew that because I had watched someone else's video from a few years past, and this place was really packed full with blooming orchids. I guess the pandemic had its effect on this orchid house too. And this is Cymbidium alloifolium. I have this one in my collection, and it's native in the southeastern Asia area. I see a lot of this in the zoo, and we might see a lot throughout the country as well. And above here, it looks like there's some deciduous dendrobiums and some mounts up on the top. The filming in the Orchid House is going to have a green shade because the shade cloth above us is green, so it's hard to see the color differences in some of the orchids. And over here, it looks like they bring in some commercial blooming Dendrobium phalaenopsis to display. A lot of anthuriums, and might be a row of more anosmums or aphyllums up above. This roof structure does not have a cover, it's just the shade cloth, so the plants receive rain. And here is a nice display of small Cattleya hybrids. I don't anticipate seeing many Cattleyas here since Cattleyas are more from South and Central America. So I would say it's rare occasion that we find it here unless it's been imported. Now this orchid looks familiar. I had one years ago. It's BLC Yen Corona Green Genie. And here's another commercial box of orchids that they will probably stage some of the blooms around. And here is a beautiful display of mostly dendrobiums. And here is a group of Hoyas. And the ones in the back in the clay pots, they look like Batilla, Chinese ground orchids, which are native to here too. Okay, a lot more hanging baskets up top, and many of them are repeated, basically divisions of more of the same. And I wish they weren't so high up so that we can have a closer look. I think some of these yellow blooms might be Spathoculatus. And, you know, before I went to Vietnam, I had already anticipated that if I saw orchids there, it would not be label identified. And I didn't expect many, if any, that I would encounter would be growing orchids like the way we do here in our well-resourced and privileged life. And some of these ones on the ground are, not seem to be very well cared for. Here's a Ranchosilus and spike right there. And more Vandas on the very top. No, I'm really surprised to see a group of Catasetum type orchids right here. And here's another pretty nice display of a variety of orchids, maybe some Cattleya hybrids as well. A yellow Oncidium, and maybe some more of the Spathoculatus. Okay, now we are back outside, and there's another large display of bonsai to the right side of the Orchid House. And we saw that earlier when we came in, so we can stop by to look at it some more. And it's an area of a lot of desert rose. And this is good use of an old tree stump with some mounted orchids on it. Now we are going to walk to the Vanda Bed area. It looks like they brought a lot of commercial Vandas here to plant. Wow, that is a big bundle. Since this is a very tropical area, Vandas can grow year-round and fast. So it must be very affordable to use Vandas for a bedding plant. Can you imagine that? I do wonder if there are many major orchid suppliers here that grow and ship orchids somewhere else. So I realized that many orchid suppliers are closer to the major customers, and the cost of transportation is more than the cost of heating and cooling to keep, a growing area. So the growers will probably more likely make the best out of the location that they are able to get and grow their supplies there. There is no market for orchids, a hobby in Vietnam, I don't think, not like the orchid collecting we do in, back home. I call this just a gardening hobby, not an orchid collecting hobby, of course. So to me, generic gardening hobby is like growing a plant and getting it cheap or free, versus orchid collecting hobby is purposely seeking and acquiring a particular orchid. And a lot of these Vandas are just a repetition of maybe just 4 or 5 different type of Vandas. It looks like mostly the same yellow ones and the same pink ones and purple, and maybe a red one as well. And they have it planted on stakes, and so a lot of the roots just reach the ground and probably soak up moisture from the ground. It is a beautiful bed, though. And in the 4 days that I was in Ho Chi Minh City, there wasn't any rain. It was dry the whole time. And I wanted to also thank you for being so patient, for waiting for this video, because I had to try to sort through all the pictures. There were so many all over the place. Okay, the next couple of minutes is just mostly of pictures of the Vandas, so you may not hear anything from me until we arrive at an old temple in Ho Chi Minh City. Okay, the next clip is from a famous old temple in Ho Chi Minh City. There is a line of orchid pots at the entrance, and these look like they're well cared for, and they're grown here because there's a lot of specimen size one and a lot of blooms. And you see how everything is in full sun right now, and it's winter here. It's about mid 80s to upper 80s sometimes. I don't know if they keep it in full sun all the time, or do they pull it back some. It looks, I feel like it's temporarily put in full sun because the pots are used to divert traffic, to keep everything going one way. Because today is an especially busy day of a lot of people coming to pray. And this is a clump of Vandas that is permanently here in a concrete pot, and unfortunately a lot of trash thrown onto it. Someone does take care of it though, because they did stake it up carefully. And for sure someone loves orchids in this temple. They have also made an archway of orchid mounts right above the seating area. These must be some cutting from some of the larger ones that were on the pots earlier. And these mounted orchids are in the shade where the seating areas are. I was visiting a neighborhood. One lady was outside watering this dendrobium, and I asked if I could take a picture, and she said absolutely. And she said that this is not her house, and she pointed to a few houses down and said that she lives there. She said, "This is my friend's house, and I just like to decorate her front door for her when these two orchids are in bloom." And the next province that I went to was Ninh Binh, which is just south of Hanoi. I went to Tam Coc, and these are orchids in one of the hotels in that area. And it's an amazing view of the limestone mountains in the background. These orchids get a lot of humidity from the river that is just next to the hotel. And this mounted arrangement is right in front of a random hotel. In such a humble way to grow the orchids. And then these are just also in front of a few hotels that I passed by. And the next set of pictures are from Hue. It's from a homestay. I stayed near the Imperial Citadel. A homestay is basically someone's home turned into a hotel, and usually the owner sections off an area of the house for guests. This courtyard has a small garden with a small tree and some hanging baskets, and it looks like a good variety in this small collection. In central Vietnam, you get a little bit of misty rain every morning, sometime in the evening, and the temperature does drop about 10 to 20 degrees, either in the morning or in the evening. And in the city of Hue, used to be a very old capital a long time ago when the dynasty was in charge. Inside. These are pictures from the Imperial Citadel where the Nguyen dynasty used to live. There are four corners in this section, the cross-sectioned walkway, that have orchid arrangements, and lots of vandas on the tree stumps. Some of the roots have anchored to the ground. And here's some cymbidium, and I think it's alifolium again, and still pictures from the Citadel. And remember, we said that we probably will see a lot of cymbidium alifolium here, and sure enough, we are seeing a lot of it. This cart is very interesting. I saw more orchids in this place in Hue than any other city. This man is selling orchids in a cart, one of the busiest streets in Hue. He charges by the kilogram. It's 150,000 Vietnamese dong per kilogram, and so about 23,000 dong is $1. and it comes out to be $12 per pound of orchids. Oh my goodness. I want to buy the whole cart, but I can't bring any of it home. This seems to be the orchid street because there are several more vendors here, but they sell by the units of eaches, and certain orchids are more expensive than the other, but this is the only one here that's selling by the kilogram. And he's got Vandas, very full, large size Vandas. He's got Nobiles. Look at them. They're in bud right now. He's got Rhongostylus, Gigantea, probably, because that's native here. And then some Phalaenopsis right inside the middle of the cart. And here is just more Phalaenopsis from across the street. And this looks to be priced at about 350,000 dong for one, or 700 for two. That works out to be for like $15 for one or $30 for two. What a deal. And this one is 150,000 dong, which is about $6.38. And these are again $15 for one or $30 for two, and you get a Vanda basket with it. I didn't ask how much a Phalaenopsis are. And this one is 120,000 dong, which is about $5.10. And here's another orchid vendor, but there's no prices on them, and the lady is eager to negotiate. I told her I could not bring any of it home, though. She has some of the precious ones, or more valued one, in the back where she's sitting, and then the front ones are mostly the Phalaenopsis and Dendrobiums. This shop is also on that busy street and way, and a lot of orchids on sale in this shop, along with a few other knickknacks. And this is the front porch of a private resident. She saw me filming and let me step in, and that's so nice of her. And I did not want to invade her privacy too long, so I am sorry, but I did not give you a long look, just a quick peek. And again, she has this under a green shade cloth, and it gets direct rain. They get light mist in the morning in this area, almost every morning. And this is a rooftop balcony area of a restaurant in Hoi An. In fact, this is one of the restaurants that Anthony Bourdain visited, and good to see that the shop kept up with the good cooking, because the food is very good here. Leave me a comment if you need to know the name of this place. And then this is someone's home out in the country in Hoi An also. And this is in the resort that I was staying. We rented a bungalow, and it's like an island with just a little house on it. And it has a second floor outdoor deck to eat on. And the resort is called Zest Villa and Spa. And the women worker there are the hardest working people I've ever seen. And staying here was like being in paradise. There was orchids on coconut trees, and some hung in clay pots and by the little house. It seems like I chose the perfect place to stay because there were orchids hung all over the place. Here's one from the front entry, and just, on several trees there were orchids. And then the walkway also had orchids underneath the overhangs. Just orchids everywhere. It was just a pleasure to walk around this property. And then walking around the neighborhood in that same area, we see a lot of orchids just hung around on porches. And this particular one had a lot. This one has a more variety too than most. This is a Vanda sideways growing. Another Cymbidium. Another Dendrobium in a clay pot. And another Cymbidium. And Nobile in bloom. And I think this is more of around people's yards again that I saw these orchids mounted on the trees. This next one is a huge concrete wall with lots of orchids mounted on the concrete wall, and it's like a waterfall also that's keeping the wall moist. And you see a lot of roots coming from some sort of vine or a tree. Well, the main thing I learned from seeing orchids all around Vietnam is that growing orchids here is very common, but it's only the native or the indigenous orchids that are very commonly grown. And that makes sense because there aren't many people here with disposable income to support the hobby. Well, we went through the pictures pretty quickly, so if you have any questions about any of them, leave me a comment and I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for joining me on this one. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.